Hey guys, it's Colleen from the Good Wives Guide to True Crime and from Murder by Design. Today, for my true crime tidbit, I'm going to tell you about a recent case that has absolutely broken my heart, and it's of 3-year-old Olivia Jansen. This case has some similar vibes to other major cases. It reminds me a lot of the Casey Anthony case and, a missing toddler, um, which I know we've been saying that a lot recently. But there are so many cases that have nuances of that case. But this poor little girl, very adorable. I'm sure you saw the pictures from our intro to this case and little caption. And she's just adorable and a life taken too soon. So back in July, the authorities in Kansas issued an Amber Alert for a 3-year-old girl who was reportedly taken from her home Friday morning on July 10th. The Kansas City Police Department said in a statement that Olivia Jansen was last seen at her home located on the 4400 block of Gibbs Road. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children said that Jansen's father woke up about 6:30 in the morning and found his daughter was missing from the residence and the back door was open. Initially, the investigators believed that Jansen was taken from her home and did not leave on her own due to her age, and a search of the surrounding area began. And she was described as being 3 foot tall, 50 pounds, having brown hair and blue-green eyes. And she was last seen wearing pink pajamas with purple or teal pants, and her hair was in a ponytail. Unfortunately, this father's story eroded very, very quickly. Throughout the day on that Friday, so same day, investigators searched around 2 homes less than a mile apart, on the one on 44th and Gibbs Road and another near 48th and Ottawa Streets. Eventually, investigators were led to a wooded area at 34th and Steele Road, and authorities found Olivia's body on July 10th, hours after her father had walked into the police station to report her missing. And that is one weird sticking point. If you open, you wake up in the morning and you find, your back door is open and your daughter's missing, you call 911. You don't, just casually stroll into the police department and say, yeah, my daughter is missing. To me, that was just weird. We've seen that before, where just perpetrators just walk into the police department. And so then Jansen arrived at that station around 6:30 in the morning. So 2 hours had passed since he woke up. And he told authorities that he last saw Olivia sleeping on the couch at his girlfriend's Kansas City home. Yes, Angelique Olivia Jansen. And he last saw her sleeping on this couch at 6 p.m. the night prior. So it's been 12 hours. But then Jansen later allegedly changed his story and said he saw his daughter around 11 p.m. the night before. So not 6, but 11. But they did find Olivia's body the same day that she was reported missing. They found Olivia's body in a shallow grave covered by sticks and dirt in the evening. Court papers say that she was badly injured, and it would have been apparent to anyone that saw her that she had suffered great physical abuse. Her face, arms, and legs were all covered in bruises, and she had a small cut on the back of her head, and an autopsy revealed significant bleeding on the back of her brain, which is what ultimately caused her death. The police officer stated that he observed broken sticks and branches on top of the shallow grave, and that he said, I could see light blue and pink clothing protruding from the dirt, as well as a small portion of a Caucasian child's face and hair. The victim was dressed in pajamas, and her body had been placed in a fetal position, and she had severe bruising all over her face. So obviously this poor girl was abused and pretty much discarded in a shallow grave, and not even a well-made shallow grave. I mean, she was half exposed, and it's just really tragic that this was committed by, her biological father and his girlfriend. So Howard Jansen III, identified as the father of 3-year-old Olivia, has been arrested for first-degree murder, aggravated endangering a child, and criminal desecration of a body. And they also arrested his girlfriend, Jacqueline Kirkpatrick, on the same charges, saying clearly law enforcement, the district attorney, and a judge who signed the warrant in this court case have made a determination of child abuse. And that was from the president of the Kansas Sunshine Coalition for Open Government. The Kansas Child Welfare Agency balked at releasing records about a 3-year-old girl whose battered body was found, despite a 2018 law that was created that aimed at making such documents more transparent. The law says that the Kansas Department for Children and Families documents are public record in the event child abuse or neglect results in a child fatality or near fatality. However, the agency declined to release the records pertaining to Olivia Jansen, saying that it is still investigating whether Olivia's death was the result of abuse or neglect, which is just complete garbage. The judge, the lawyers have all made that determination that, yes, she died from abuse, clearly. Her body and her autopsy showed that. And there is a record with CPS and how they failed this child. And it's a law that they have to give these documents over. So the fact that they're refusing to lets you know that CPS did fail this child. So the girl's grandparents said that they had raised concerns about her safety with Child Protective Services. The agency told the Associated Press in a July 27th email that the records are not open to the public because it had not completed its investigation whether she had died from abuse or neglect. So they're saying that it's actively investigating, but the judge in the court has already determined that it was. So I think they're just stalling. In another call, a tipster had said that Kirkpatrick, the girlfriend, hit Olivia. The agency, however, reported that it didn't find any bruising on her and that the person who made that call recanted their story and the case was closed. The report had said 2 reports were made, one alleging that Dad hit Olivia on the leg, leaving a bruise, and that the leg might be broken. Another report stated that Kirkpatrick hit Olivia. The case was assigned to a worker that same day, and DCF interviewed Olivia that day, and no marks or bruises were observed. DCF notes that after reaching back out to the person who filed the report, the story was recanted. So, I mean, this does happen where some people will make kind of these reports out of anger or jealousy, or maybe there is general concern, but maybe not exact proof of that at the time. And I've said it before, some of my favorite shows are like Steve Wilkos, because it just pretty much involves, unfortunate situations that happen to children, whether it be murder, sexual abuse, violence, child abuse. And so a lot of the times, they do find out that this child was victimized, and usually it's by a member of a family. But there are occasions when all the lie detector tests prove that it was a false report, and the person had made it up to get back at an ex or something. But I think in this case that maybe the story at the time wasn't true, but they knew things regarding the behavior of the parents and Olivia, and that most likely this was true at one time, and they wanted to tip off the police. Like I said, we don't know. Hopefully Kansas City will give the records over. It's law that they have to. And then on June 22nd, DCF received a call from Olivia's step-grandmother, Elizabeth Jansen, regarding substance abuse around the child. The agency set up a family in need of assessment and scheduled a meeting for a week later. And on June 30th, a caseworker set up a call with Olivia and Kirkpatrick, the girlfriend. The reports indicated that Olivia seemed excited about the upcoming 4th of July. And so then the step-grandma had said, a video, isn't that kind of a warning? I mean, I'm not saying that I think my grandchild is, that I'm scared for my grandchild, but you're going to do a video call and that's all. And so the issue of this video phone call was that no one actually physically saw Olivia during that meeting, according to the DCF secretary, because they claimed that a family in need of assessment is not an emergency situation like child abuse allegations. The video conference call was the proxy that we used because the child was reported to be out of state. So they're saying that, she wasn't in the state at the time. where else would she have been? And she said, our worker really insisted in having a video contact because she felt like it was very important to be able to see Olivia and be able to talk to her, as we reported in the summary. The step-grandma, however, previously told Nancy Grace on Crime Stories that she not only reported suspected drug abuse, but also suspected child abuse, neglect, possible prostitution, and possible drug dealers were after her dad, Jansen, and Kirkpatrick, the girlfriend. So a host of crimes being committed in this household and with or around the child. And it doesn't go into detail whether, the prostitution was of just the girlfriend or if Olivia had possibly been involved. We don't know that. But it's clear from what the information we do know was that Olivia was abused for a long time and that she died from child abuse. And so, I don't put it out of the realm of possibility that these things also happened. If you look at the mugshots of the father and girlfriend, they don't look like the most seemly of people and, church going, upstanding citizens, to say the least. So, I'll let the court decide and the investigators decide what is true and what is not. But I unfortunately think this is going to turn out to be a lot of true information. The investigation was still in progress on July 7th when the dad tested positive for THC. As a result of the report, he was contacted for the report on June 30th. He was asked to take the drug test, and he tested positive on July 7th. In 3 days after the drug test results, Olivia was killed. On a Wednesday episode of Crime Stories with Nancy Grace, Howard Jansen III's stepmother, Elizabeth Jansen, told Nancy Grace that she's known the suspect since he was 2 years old. As he got older, he became vicious, according to her, and would even harm small animals. And we've talked about this a lot, that this is something that we do see in signs of early sociopaths and serial killers, is that they start young with a curiosity of how things work, and then they start usually dissecting dead animals, and then gets to the point where they would start harming small animals. And sometimes, it progresses to not just small animals, but a little bit bigger animals like dogs. And then they kind of progress to humans. And, we see that a lot with serial killers specifically. We all know, Jeffrey Dahmer did that same thing. And so the fact that he was doing this as a kid is, concerning. Olivia was laid to rest this past week. And it has sparked actually several protests in the area because they want, the records released from DCF and Child Services regarding the history of abuse, and then they want justice for Olivia. If DCF ignored these reports and didn't do anything to take this child out of harm's way, they want justice and somebody to, be reprimanded for allowing a 3-year-old to be essentially murdered by her parents. And they knew several reports about child abuse from not just, strangers, but also from family members. And in this, video clip in the shorthand, it was actually heartbreaking because the grandma had said that she was always afraid to go home back to her dad's, and would say, I come back. And are you mad at me? I come back. She knew that, there could be the opportunity that she might not come back. So it's really sad that she was aware at 3 years old that there was an opportunity that she wasn't going to be able to see her grandparents again. And that 3 days after he tests positive for THC, and he already has a criminal record and reports of abuse, somebody should have gotten a hold of them and taken Olivia into custody to protect her. And for 3 days they didn't, and then 3 days she passed away. So really a heartbreaking case. And I'm sure we're going to learn more information as this comes out. And hopefully we are able to get those records regarding DCF. And we see this way too often where there have been reports made to Child Protective Service police departments, but somehow things get brushed under the rug or things aren't taken as seriously. And a child is ultimately harmed and sometimes killed because of it. We do see that, also in the opposite case where reports are made and, they do take the children away and, after months or years of investigating and lie detector tests, it proves that they didn't do anything wrong, and they were lost with their child and not seeing them for over a year. But it's more likely the opposite case where a child is harmed because they did not take them away. And obviously, so I'm a nurse. I teach nursing. My husband's a social worker, and so we see social services cases a lot, and we see the after effect of what can happen and the investigative side of trying to determine if things are abuse and how we can protect people. Tim didn't want to go into children specifically because he couldn't handle dealing with the hurt and abused children, so he focuses more with the elderly and elder abuse. And there is a lot of that as well that we don't talk about as much, but elderly people are victims of abuse as well, and neglect. But I chose the opposite realm. I went into pediatric nursing because I feel like it's my duty to help treat and save kids and keep them safe and give them the best possible care. I decided to go work with Children's Hospital because I was a preemie baby, and I was in their NICU for a couple months in a chemically induced coma, and they saved my life, and I always wanted to give back to them. All the women in my family are nurses, and I hope I've made them proud, and I continue to make them proud. Now I teach nursing, so I instill these values into my students, that it's our responsibility to keep patients safe from outside sources, from illnesses inside, from errors that can happen inside of a medical facility. So when I talk about these cases in terms of children, and I go through some of the more gory cases and things, I do it because I feel like I have a duty to share this information with people, that a lot of times these cases don't get talked about because they're sad and upsetting and nobody wants to think of, dead children. But I think it's important for the public to be aware that unfortunately there are monsters in our society who purposely hurt, harm, abuse, assault, molest, and kill children. And we need to be aware of that, not just for our communities, but if you're a parent, to know that, these things happen. And unfortunately, most cases, it's not a stranger to somebody close to you. It's a family member, a neighbor, coworker. Very rarely is it a random stranger, but, it can happen. So I like talking about them just to bring awareness for all of you. And so some of these more disturbing cases that are way too disturbing, I don't talk about publicly here on our Facebook or our YouTube or our podcast, just because it's not necessarily like kosher to talk about these topics in the general public sense. And so I want to remind everybody that I do have a historical podcast, a monthly episode in our Patreon and our membership website. This past month, I covered Leonard Lake and Charles Ng, who were the Miranda murderers. And then this month, I'm going to be talking and covering about Albert Fish. And it's a very, very disturbing case about child abuse, murder, and cannibalism. And so if you're interested in learning about that, please sign up, get those notifications. And let me know if there are other cases that are pretty dark or gruesome or historical that you want to hear more about. Let me know. Email us, goodwivesdish@gmail.com, or shoot us a message on any of our socials. And who knows, you might get mentioned in one of our episodes. And speaking of historical cases, Please stay tuned to our social media pages as we will be coming out with some super short clips, just quick updates on every day about different things related to true crime, some books, just different things. But I will be doing a This Day in History relating to true crime and some war crimes every day. So tune in this evening to catch the first one. And super excited to bring those to you guys. Obviously, history is my passion, and so I'm going to be bringing you This Day in History coming forward. So thanks for tuning in, guys, and I'll catch you all later.